Good day to everyone in Moscow and in Singapore and in other countries which generate our audience as well. And these are Indonesia, the Philippines, Pakistan, Germany, China, Russia, Uzbekistan. Well, but some among our audience, I believe, are exchange students who are studying in Russian universities. We are proud and happy to present our today's speaker, Dr. Xue Gong from S.Rajaratnam School of International Studies at Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. And Dr. Gun will share her perspective on the energy cooperation between China and Southeast Asia and China's energy policy in the region. I will briefly present our today's speaker, and the program will be as usual with the talk of the invited speaker. Then we will have some time reserved for Q&As and discussion. So Dr. Gun holds a PhD in international political economy from NTU, and her current research interests include international political economy, China's economic diplomacy, regionalism, and governance. She has contributed to several peer-reviewed journals such as the International Affairs, the Pacific Review, Contemporary Southeast Asia, Harvard Asia Quarterly, and some others. And she is a frequent co-editor and contributor to the academic publications. One of the recent ones include the co-edited book, Securing the Belt and Road Initiative, Risk Assessment, Private Security and Special Insurances Along the New Wave of Chinese Outbound Investment. So just final word is that we have a campus-based audience here with me today. These are our MA and BA students who are majoring in international relations, Asian studies, and related issues. So without much further ado, let me pass the floor to Dr. Gun. Xue, please, you can share your screen now with the presentation, and the floor is yours. Sorry, you are muted, so please turn on your mic.
A very good morning to Moscow. Thank you very much, Ekaterina, for your kind introduction. And also, this is a very honorable opportunity for me to present as part of this ASEAN Academic Days. As I'm also aware that this year is gonna be the of Russia and ASEAN dialogue partnership. Please pardon me if I am very much limited in providing any insights on bilateral relationship between Russia and ASEAN. As you've already heard, like my background is pretty much centered on China and ASEAN. So without further ado, today I'm gonna have sort of like mutual learning with you guys by sharing what I did for the past few months. The topic is on energy security cooperation, which I want to highlight in this paper is a soft approach. Why it is soft, I will explain to you later. So before I go on, may I double check with you if my screen is shared?
Here.
Okay, good. All right. So here is the structure of today's lecture, which I'm going to introduce you the kind of like a research goal and what are the background information before we move on to the highlight of today, how we should understand China's approach from the public goods provision perspective, which I consider as a much softer, much more subtler approach. And then I will summarize the kind of like findings since the Belt and Road Initiative was introduced. And then I will conclude with some policy implications. All right, now let's move on to the first part, the introduction. So I hope by the end of this lecture, you can have some better understanding of the motivations, modifications, and impacts of China's energy financing in Southeast Asia. I don't know how much you're familiar with the literature in this regard. Generally speaking, there were two, approaches assessing, China's energy engagement, cooperation, or financing. And one of the most, predominant perspective is traced back to economic security nexus, which is, part of this economic statecraft literature. In this kind of approach, people or scholars generally hold that China's energy security cooperation is largely based on seeking for energy supplies, seeking for power to serve for its foreign and security interests, especially in South China Sea, right? That's why we've seen examples including how China has been cooperating to secure the sea lanes in the Indian Ocean and Malacca Strait. And the other example could probably be, the diversification of China's energy investments in Myanmar, where, the two gas and oil pipelines starts from Rakhine State. All right. So these kind of narratives, are very popular. Not only just in the region, but also I think in the international intellectual accounts. While there's the other explanation, which is more or less based on governance impact assessment. So people either from NGO or from academic, they would assess the environmental and social impact of Chinese energy financing and engagement in the region. And the dominant, narratives is usually China's energy financing in the region poses great challenges to local ecology, environment, and society. And somehow, China's economic engagement is interlinked with, the political regime, political stability of the host country. And those two explanations, they're quite vast, they're quite broad. I feel, they explain a lot of things and that actually makes sense. We've seen the empirical observations, you can make conclusions from that. However, I still feel there's sort of like a gap. And this kind of gap is, first of all, is I think all of these observations, they are quite outdated. They don't really follow that much, especially on the governance impact, perspective. They don't really follow much about China's domestic energy investment transformation as well as institutional reforms. And the other thing is regarding, the international environment where the countries such as ASEAN member states, such as China, they all ratified Paris Agreement. So I feel it's time to reevaluate those narratives. So here is what I propose as China's soft approach, where I'm gonna look at reforming China's energy investment in Southeast Asia, how diverse it has become. And second is I'm gonna look at the entrepreneurship of China in regional institutionalization, namely it means how China, restart a new mechanism, or how China takes the leadership in the existing mechanism. Last but not least is, I think it's quite interesting that the Chinese government has been utilizing the non-state actors that include civil society, both local and Chinese civil society, the Chinese business actors in the energy engagement, particularly in the Mekong countries, the mainland Southeast Asian countries. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. Oh, sorry. So basically this slide is just to give you a brief, background information on what has China been doing before 2013. I take 2013 as a watershed period because 2013 is where the Belt and Road Initiative was launched by Chinese President Xi Jinping. And before that, I think there are mainly 5 features. One is Beijing's engagement in terms of energy security cooperation or energy governance cooperation with Southeast Asia is primarily, manifested through searching for energy security. And this is quite vivid in numerous Chinese leadership official statements. For example, the former Chinese President Hu Jintao's speech, he mentioned several times, about this narrative, Malacca Strait dilemma. All right, so we can sense that this energy security diversification for its domestic market demand, drives largely, China's energy interest in Southeast Asia. And the sea link, as I mentioned before in the literature review, the securing of the sea links is one of them. And the second feature would be China's engagement in the region is actually quite embedded in different layers of multilateral mechanisms centered on ASEAN. And the examples I list here, they are not exclusive, okay? The examples are East Asian ministerial level meetings that convene the ministers from energy and natural resources, ministries, like on an annual basis. And there's also ADB-led sub-regional mechanism called Greater Mekong Sub-Regional Cooperation. And there's also, non-traditional security-centered recap, basically on combating piracy and robbery, in the maritime domain, as well as the much more heard forum, ARF, ASEAN Regional Forum. So China has been quite active, but let's pose it here. Chinese activism in these multilateral mechanisms are pretty much ASEAN-centered. In addition to those multilateral mechanisms, China also adopts a bilateral approach, and it's reflected in the investment sectors, in particular, coal-fired power plants and hydropower investments. You've seen, usually it will be, between two government heads when they convene, they brought with their SOEs or their business elites to discuss about consortium or a joint venture, that kind of investment modes for those bilateral cooperation. And very clearly, the commercial motivations, had been driving China's activism in this regard. And when we talk about the energy security cooperation, one inevitable topic would be the disputed South China Sea. We've seen China's, attempted moves of collaborating with the Philippines and Vietnam in early 2000 in terms of carrying out the JMS, the Joint Marine Seismic Research and Investigation. But that kind of JMS, that kind of mechanism basically failed due to the geopolitics and security concerns and issues. So the mistrust has been very evident in China's energy engagement, especially with some of the South China Sea claimants. Last but not least is related to what I shared before regarding the governance issue. We've seen the increasing regional and local anxiety and concerns over China's energy-related activities, and it's pretty much evident in hydropower, if I can say. Okay, let me move on to the next slide. So what do I mean by soft turn in China's approach? How different it is from the 5 features that I shared just now. First of all, I think one of the measurements should be, if you look at the Chinese official narratives regarding energy security cooperation or energy governance cooperation, you find out the strategic contonation of energy was switched into a more public goods oriented narrative. All right, I give examples of the 2 documents. One is the Belt and Road Initiative Energy Cooperation Action Plan. It's quite similar to the BRI Action and Vision plans, but in this Energy Cooperation Action Plan, there are a lot of words, catchy words that I listed below. The keywords regarding the poverty alleviation, regarding South-South cooperation, climate change protection, multilateralism, etc., etc. And it's almost the same in the latest 2021 white paper on China's international development cooperation. So you would not really see it in the official narratives before 2013. Okay, especially when those words like poverty alleviation, I think these are the most receptive ones that to the local community and local civil society. And as a matter of fact, the Chinese government has been adopting lots of poverty alleviation projects along with their energy investment projects that I can share with you later. And what are the goals for this subtle and soft turn? First of all is, of course, to depoliticize the development cooperation. Why I say so, I'm sure you've noticed, in recent years, especially during the former US President Donald Trump's administration, the politicizing or politicization of Chinese international financing has been on the rise, right? We've seen the words like predatory economics, like debt trap, all these kind of disturbing words for China is building blocks for the Chinese energy or other infrastructure engagement in the region. And the second goal that I think is China tries to build a benign image for its leadership, not just in the region in terms of environmental protection, in terms of global climate governance, but also it is aligned with Chinese international ambition, where we've seen it donated or it implemented year-marked aids in the United Nations. And last but not least is, I think it's more geo-economically driven as energy cooperation can be incorporated as part of this capital and technology standards diffusion. If you notice Chinese economic diplomacy, you find out, exporting China's standards has been, has been very heatedly debated, not just in international society, but also in within the Chinese scholars and intellectual communities. So those are the three, I think, most important goals for this subtle change. And again, I'm going to elaborate the approaches in order to reach those soft approach. All right, so let me share with you the first part regarding the diversification of energy investments. Chinese energy investment in Southeast Asia has never been, fuel or the LNG. It's unlike in Central Asia, unlike in Russia or in the Middle East. China's energy investment is largely concentrated in what I listed here as coal-fired power plants, connectivity, and renewables. Okay, before we get into details, let me share with you the overview of China's energy financing in the region. If you can see from this figure, it's very clear that China's energy engagement is predominantly supported by its financial and technological power. The most activities of Chinese energy companies involved in this regard includes supplying construction, services, equipment, exportation, and financial support by the Chinese policy banks. All right, and in this figure, it's also very clear that starting from 2008, Chinese energy financing in Southeast Asia has been, on the increasing trend. Although there's a drop or decline in some of the years. By the way, if you may wonder where are the sources or where are the data, where is the data coming from? I rely on the China energy financing database provided by Boston University. And if you're interested, they have very interesting, figures for you to play around. And in terms of the energy in terms of the geographical feature, China's energy financing is largely concentrated in less developed 6 Southeast Asian countries. They are Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Myanmar, the Philippines, and Vietnam. And among those countries, Indonesia, Laos, and Vietnam are the top 3 recipients of Chinese energy financing. And in terms of the sectors by China's energy financing, it's very clear the power generation by coal as well as by the hydropower, dominate China's interest, followed by the transmission and distribution, as well as exploration and extraction. Okay, now let's move on to the specific sectors and see how China has been involved in those specific sectors. The first sector is China's coal-fired power plants. I give you some figures. Okay, here, let me share with you this table. Basically, there are two tables. As I mentioned before, Indonesia and Vietnam, they're the two largest, recipient countries of China's energy financing in coal. The China's interest in, in the coal-fired power plants investment is largely due to the development model of Southeast Asian countries that have been largely or heavily reliant on coal for their energy plans. With that being said, that I imply that it's not China choose to do this kind of project. It is the market demand from Vietnam, Indonesia. And China has been involved in more than 40% of the coal-fired power plants in Southeast Asia. Take Indonesia, for example. The Indonesian government contracted about 1/4 of Chinese coal-based power plants in Asia, and that's quite overwhelming if compared to the other countries. All right. However, I want to emphasize here again is on the changing investment dynamics in the region. First of all is with the lowering costs of renewable energy technology and the increasing side effect of those coal-fired power plants, Southeast Asian countries, they are witnessed to build less and less, coal-fired power plants, except Indonesia. And it's also because ASEAN, all the ASEAN member states, they have begun to align themselves with the Paris Agreement ratified in 2016. Okay, and this declining interest in coal-fired power plants is supported by a report structured by, I think, Global Energy Monitor, and kind of like NGO. So according to that report, the coal-fired power plant construction has dropped sharply from 2015 to 2018, and with almost 5/6 decline. All right. And on the other hand, for China, it is also trying to reconsider the investment in this sector, because the coal-fired power plants is accompanied with overcapacity, with environmental risks and regulational risks, and for the Chinese domestic, SOEs, they feel the market is already saturated. So there's kind of like a signal. The Chinese companies, they may retreat to a certain extent. Now let's move on to the connectivity, which is based on the power grids and the natural gas and oil pipelines. Here is what I mean by the connectivity. In this sector, Chinese engagement is largely, concentrated in the Mekong countries, for example, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar. And as a matter of fact, the investments in the gas and oil pipelines in Myanmar accounts the most, Chinese investments in this sector. And there are several proposals, in the vision. For example, the 500 kilovolt backbone sub-region transmission line project between Laos and Cambodia that extends to China. Okay. Now let's move on to the most interesting, I think in my mind, is most interesting sector, which is the renewables. The renewables, it's a multifaceted definition. To some people, the renewables such as hydropower, it's controversial. So for China's investments in this regard, the predominant investments largely concentrates in hydropower, as I showed you before. And obviously the Mekong countries, they receive the most investments, as I show in the figure 4. Okay. And the second feature of Chinese, renewable investments is slightly different from the hydro power projects. The other renewable investments, such as solar, such as wind, such as biomass in Southeast Asia, they are on the rise, but it's quite, it's quite small compared to hydropower. Let me show you here in this table. If you compare to the other, countries outside of this region, such as Pakistan, such as India, and even Ukraine, you find out, Chinese investments in this sector is minimal. You can actually ignore it to a certain extent. All right, but I think the Chinese companies, they're trying different ways to propose, to negotiate, and to implement in different formats. So we need time to finally, have the data in terms of Chinese engagement, and this is one of the problems that researchers usually encounter, is the transparency of the data. So we will see in the future. And the third feature of Chinese renewable investments is, as I mentioned before, is the diffusion of its technology. I give you example of how China has been utilizing it in the Mekong countries by tapping on its Beidou system, the Beidou satellite, where the satellite helps Cambodia and Laos in monitoring, like the flood levels, like the water levels, in a more precise way. Okay, and we've seen this accompanying ICT infrastructure with energy investments has been increasingly popular when the Chinese companies are going out. So it's of like a package, not just a package of Chinese contractors, Chinese laborers, but also a package of Chinese, technology. And last but not least is, although we don't have many concrete examples except for the hydropower, but we've seen the narratives of Chinese image in the renewables in the region, that the Chinese government, together with its SOEs, they want to provide public goods. They want to help address the environmental issues in the region. Okay, and now let's move on to the second part in terms of institutional entrepreneurship. There's some background information in this slide as well. I'm sure you've heard so many mechanisms that I mentioned before, right? In terms of regional energy cooperation. However, when I interview the Chinese officials, they always mention about this fragmentation regional collaboration mechanism. They think there's no such overarching, layout for all the East Asian countries to implement on the concrete projects. And in this region, none of the member states, including China, not a member of ASEAN, of course, none of the member states, they are the member of the International Energy Agency. And ASEAN member states, as well as China, they only became an observer of International Energy Charter Treaty in recent years. So this kind of institutional gap made the China, fasten its pace in terms of institutionalization, and second is it is aligned with Chinese international ambition. We've seen Chinese, the resumption of its leadership in the South-South Cooperation Fund embedded in United Nations. We've also seen China has been making use of multilateral forums to promote green finance and green bonds like this. And this is aligned with China's moves in the region as well. And here's the example that I show you, starting from 2010 and particularly starting from 2013, there are new mechanisms that China proposed, and all of them are actually functioning. I highlighted this China ASEAN Investment Cooperation Fund. Why I highlighted here is because I want to emphasize on the environmental and social impact guidelines issued by this sovereignty fund. It can be considered as one of the most advanced practices by China, by China's financing. Okay, and the other thing I want to highlight is the Lantang Mekong Cooperation. Lantang Mekong Cooperation is considered as China's, overthrowing attempts against the MRC, the Mekong River Commission. And there are lots of debates on the LMC. And if you're interested, we can, you can raise questions during the Q&A. Okay, let's look at the final analysis on the soft approach, which is the subtle shift to non-state actors. By saying that, I'm not trying to argue, the Chinese government has been receptive to relying, the non-state actors in the public diplomacy. The Chinese government definitely is still very cautious of those non-state actors. Probably, embedded in the DNA of the Communist Party, they do not trust those societal groups. However, we found that the Chinese government realized these actors, they are playing a complementary role to China's public diplomacy, especially by those, the three actors, think tanks and research institutes, Chinese companies, as well as the NGOs. Okay, and I want to highlight the Chinese companies because they are the, here in this context, I mean the Chinese SOEs. So they are much more, trusted by the Chinese by the Chinese government compared to the NGO. And as a matter of fact, all of the projects they are implemented, in terms of energy, I would rather say a majority of them, they are by the SOEs, right? And as an implementer, their role is critical in terms of diffusing China's image, in terms of diffusing China's technology and capitals. So here are a few examples, and I want to highlight the example in Cambodia by the Chinese SOE Huanen. It is one of the most pioneering Chinese SOE that collaborated with the local NGO, the Asian Vision Institute in Cambodia. The AVI is one of the most recognized NGO in Cambodia. So Huanen collaborated with AVI in terms of implementing the corporate social responsibility, in terms of immigration, in terms of capacity building in the affected area, which I find is very fascinating. I think this is only a few examples, and also emerging example to show that the Chinese companies, together with the Chinese government, they are changing in terms of framing their approach in energy security, in energy cooperation. All right. And I probably will conclude very soon. So what are the challenges so far for the Chinese energy cooperation in the region? First of all is, I think still the Chinese government needs to improve on the transparency. I understand that from the recently issued white paper, the Chinese government has been, at least appears very committed to improving this by introducing the indexes, the measurements of how to improve transparency and how to evaluate the efficiency and effectiveness of the projects. But those projects, they're in the host country, and those host country, according to the World Bank governance indicator, you could say, perhaps except Singapore, most of the countries, they have here and there governance issues. So I would have some reservations on this, but I would expect some improvements as well. And the second is the link between China's financing and geopolitics in the region has undermined efforts at joint energy development proposals, not just between China and the Southeast and the claimants of the South China Sea disputes, but also with the competition or the competitive proposals, issued or launched by United States, by Japan. We've seen the trend of politicizing China's financing in this region, which is not healthy for the regional development and governance, because we've always we are always being asked which side you are choosing, which financing you are using. I don't think any of the ASEAN member state leaders, they want to choose. But eventually, how to depoliticize it needs all rounds of efforts to do that. And the next point I want to highlight is how China can actually enhance its the development discourse, either of its BRI or synergizing with ASEAN Master Connectivity Plan, how it can overcome those narrative competition, how its story can be trusted by the ASEAN member states. We feel that in the region, those economic or infrastructure activities, they are pretty much China dominated. And there's voices rising from the region that ASEAN centrality should also be reflected in the developmental discourse. All right. And last but not least is, as all of us are aware of the regional political instability, as what happened in Myanmar, the military coup. I would say China may be the biggest loser in this military coup because it has been committed itself to quite a few, flagship BI projects, and that has been going on well with the NLD government led by Aung San Suu Kyi. But with this situation suddenly, shuffled, I would rather see it's very complicated and tricky for the Chinese government. It's not just Myanmar. The political instability in Malaysia, in Thailand, they can all pose problems for all the foreign investments, not just China. All right. Okay, so let me summarize before I conclude. Hopefully that you can have a better understanding of the China's motivation in energy engagement in the region. One thing is definitely, there's market here for the Chinese investments. Chinese investments are popular because the similar developmentalism is shared by Southeast Asian countries and China. And second is traditional fossil fuel investments in coal-fired power plants still dominate China's energy investment due to the investment environment and also the constraints for renewables in the region. Like there are not many incentives in the regional governments to promote the renewables. So the Chinese companies, they are encountered with much limited choices, but we will see, such landscape will change soon. And third is, I analyze how China has been gradually adapting to the regional energy governance due to the shortcomings, the lessons that it drew from the past energy engagement. Last but not least is this soft approach is still limited by institutional and geopolitical factors. Okay, so let me conclude with some humble policy suggestions. One is, I think the developmental, whether it's BRI or its infrastructure connectivity plans by ASEAN, it should be the negative narratives on the China's energy financing should be reduced. We should take a much more cautious and neutral stance in assessing the impacts, as well as the the implications. And second is we are aware of the institutional deficit. So for countries like China, it should continue to support ASEAN in taking the lead of regional energy infrastructure projects. Last but not least is the region should change the stance of waiting for, relying, and demanding, this kind of mindset. You should be more proactive in creating a business friendly environment for investors. So those are, my rough suggestions. And here I conclude my presentation, and your comments and questions are welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gun. I think we all learned a lot about this changes in the Chinese stance vis-a-vis the region in terms of energy cooperation. We will now move to Q&A session. And before we do that, and meanwhile the audience is gathering their thoughts together, I would like to ask you, I think, a quite natural question. You told us very marvelously about the way China tried to adjust its stance in the energy security cooperation area when it faced the difficulties, counter narratives, etc. But how receptive Southeast Asian states have been to these changes? So let's kick off the discussion with this question, and then I think my colleagues and friends and students and audience will join with the questions and comments. Oh, yeah, we have our speaker back here. Xue, can you hear us? Is everything okay?
Yes,
yeah, I will just repeat what I have said before this tragic moment of your disappearance. You brilliantly told us about the changes and the adjustments in China's energy cooperation policy, but how receptive Southeast Asian countries have been to these changes and to this soft turn? And then, please, I ask the audience to raise the questions. Please indicate your wish either in chat or via the raised hand function. Please, Xue.
All right, I'm so sorry. I accidentally pressed the leave button. So sorry for that. So I should address the question first before we hand over to the audience, right? Or you want to collect several rounds of questions?
Well, if we can do that, if you prefer doing that like this, I will give the floor to Gabriel Honorada, then to Nigel Lee here with us. Then Alexander Leonov is in the queue, and probably Dr. Guliev will comment if he wishes. He's our colleague from the Energy Institute, specifically focused on the energy issues. So, Gabriel, if you could turn on your mic and camera, please do that.
Oh, hello. Hello, everyone.
And see you.
Okay, so hello, good morning, everybody. I'm Gabriel Honrada. I'm a master's student at the People's Friendship University of Russia. So I have a question for our dear professor, our speaker, and perhaps a few comments first. So first, I would like to view China's energy investment efforts as part of increasing its acceptance in Southeast Asia. For one, we know it's overused narrative that the United States and China are in the strategic competition. And I think the best card for China to be accepted in the Southeast Asian region is to make the region a better place generally. And how to make the region a better place? Through development aid and particularly in your presentation, through energy cooperation. So as I've seen in your presentation, the Philippines has been losing out on a lot of China's energy funding, a meager 2%. What's that? That's peanuts, insignificant almost. And I do think that the main challenge between between getting the Philippines to somehow consider China as a reliable partner in energy investment is the challenge of accountability. As far as we know, we had this unfavorable experience with China back in the early 2000s with the NB and ZTE deal between the Chinese government and Philippine government, which was also connected to oil exploration in the South China Sea. This ended up badly. So my question to our dear professor would be, how could Southeast Asian states ensure accountability from China that this energy development won't spill onto other critical and politically sensitive issues? I, for one, coming from the defense sector formerly, knows that sometimes the narrative in the Philippines can be myopic. Everything is viewed through the prism of the South China Sea dispute and at the expense of all other fields of cooperation. And also, I do think that there is a third player involved. I mean, the defense sector in the Philippines is overly marinated in the US narrative that hey, they are picking up on you, they're ganging up on you, stand up and fight for your rights. But the thing is, maybe we are losing sight of the bigger picture, and China is a reliable partner, but we want to know how can we hold them accountable, how their energy exploration or development projects won't spill off to other critical sectors that we consider politically sensitive and non-negotiable. And in brief, that is my question. Thank you very much, Professor.
Nigel.
Hello, can you hear me, Dr. Gong? Thank you. My name is Nigel. I'm a second-year student at MGIMO. And I have two questions. One is to briefly reiterate, I think, the previous two questionnaires. And that is, how should China depoliticize energy cooperation when mistrust, it seems, based on the questions, is deeply seated? And it seems that if that's the case, it needs to be a very long-term, a decade, 2-decade-long process. And it seems that there's a bit of a paradox here where unless these projects go forward and long-term projects go forward, we can't see the results of them. And yet these actors and states are reluctant to even start them to allow China to have the opportunity to reshape its image. So that's my first question. The second one is kind of a follow-up to this. So I've been paying attention to the Nord Stream 2 situation. So I'm curious to whether, even if, let's say, trust is established multilaterally or bilaterally between Asian states and China, do you think there would be a possibility of a third party like the United States coming in to actually pressure or drive a wedge between such cooperation as we see between Germany and Russia right now? So those are my two questions. Thank you. Oh.
Okay, then Alexander Leonov, next question, please. And then Dr. Gun, then we will have your reactions and then get back to the audience.
Yeah, thank you so much for your brilliant presentation. I actually have a question about, let's say again, about the perspective of those Southeast Asian countries. It seems to me that if China keeps on promoting those initiatives and even, for example, has a chance to actually depoliticize them, I mean, it actually means to me that they will have been making the Southeast Asian countries to pick sides, because if China becomes more active in that kind of policy, it actually means that those smaller countries in the Southeast Asian region will have, well, a narrower place for a maneuver than they have been recently having, trying to not pick sides and get the most benefits they actually can from, well, all the countries that are interested in the region. So does this actually implicate that the smaller countries in the region will have to pick sides, and by that action, they will actually have narrower opportunities than they've had before? Thank you.
Should I respond now?
Yeah, please, you're more than welcome to respond.
I think we've collected, including yours, we've collected like 5 questions, and they are all of them are interlinked. Thanks very much for those fascinating questions. I will address them, in the following ways. So the receptiveness of ASEAN member states to China's, soft approach, I think the most useful measurements is by looking at the projects from 2013 to now. Except for a few modified projects in Jiaopil, Myanmar, the deep sea port, which was, largely downscaled, and the other one on East Coast Railway Link. I mean, those are not related to energy, right? But except for those two infrastructure projects, we've seen all of them are still being implemented. And we've seen new projects, but in a much slow pace. They are also being proposed by the host countries, I mean, the Southeast Asian countries, even, during the pandemic. So there's a huge demand for Chinese financing. And I would like to highlight by referring to ASEAN member state leaders, official narratives that they are they are receptive to Chinese financing. But of course, we've also hear these kind of debates or discussions on whether ASEAN should revert this China-dominated, financing into a more ASEAN-centered projects. And that's something the Chinese government is also making adjustments, which I encourage you to take a look at the white paper in 2021 that I mentioned previously. This white paper highlights one of the concept, returning the ownership of projects to local governments. And how to return, one of the things is to change the cooperation structure. And I think some of you guys mentioned about the third-party collaboration. Japan and EU are listed as the potential partner, and we've seen the MOUs already signed with these governments. And that's one thing, the third-party cooperation. And the second is to localize, for example, localize the procurement, the suppliers, to promote the local supplies. And how to do that? The Chinese government in the white paper promotes that they will collaborate with, for example, World Bank or even AIIB in terms of the capacity building. So we've seen the attempted, intention to make a change in terms of increasing or improving its image and increasing its influence in this developmental discourse. And these attempts are being made to depoliticize what we are seeing. Okay, to what extent it is successful? I think we need several head-ups to understand what was going on previously, right? As Gabriel mentioned about the sort of like assurance by Southeast Asian countries how to avoid being played into unfair energy cooperation or dangerous or sort of like a trap. I think one thing is, generally speaking, these hidden traps, they are the practices have been criticized, such as dominant Chinese procurement, such as Chinese workers, right? But if you really go into the projects that China funded, you find out the localization is increasing. They're taking places as states, those improvements, they are taking places, but China or the host country, they do not have this channel for them to communicate. And that's one of the weaknesses the Chinese government has been trying to fill up, has been trying to improve on. That's one thing. And second is Southeast Asian regulatory environment is quite diverse. For countries like Cambodia and Myanmar, you may perceive them both as weak states in terms of governance, and China must have the leverage. I would rather to offer a counter argue. You can say that in the context of Cambodia, but in Myanmar, I would say it's rather difficult because in Myanmar, usually the Chinese company, they have to collaborate with the SOEs controlled by the military. And those military, people, they're not reliable. But for the Chinese investments in Cambodia, they largely collaborate with the local business elites. And some of them, they may have some sort of connections with the governments, but they do not control, they do not have that kind of control compared to the Myanmar military personnel in those in those pillar economy sectors. So it really depends on the regulatory environment, whether it creates leverage for the foreign investors, not just China, and also it depends on the money that those countries borrowed. For as far as I know, only Laos in the region may be vulnerable to the default from borrowing too much from China. Even Cambodia, it has diversified its its borrowing. Sorry, it has diversified its borrowing with ADB, with Japan as the top lenders of its debts. So each of them, they have means to ameliorate the potential impacts of the foreign investors. So my basic point here is not really how China could leverage, but really how China could avoid being leveraged by the host countries. We've seen examples of the Chinese investments being sucked in the areas that is conflict prone or that is corrupted because they didn't do the due diligence, because the local governments didn't provide the symmetric information to them. So I would rather take it as alternative perspective in looking at China's financing or development financing influences in the region. And last but not least is what Southeast Asia should do in this regard. I think the third-party cooperation that mentioned by the audience is fantastic. I've seen Thailand has been taking the leadership in trying to bring Japan and China in its airport, infrastructure, the 3 airports connectivity projects. And I'm not sure about the concrete achievements so far, because of the pandemic, but such stances already show Southeast Asian countries, they as weaker or smaller states, they can actually, leverage, they can actually play around and even maneuver among the big powers. But it's really up to how much they want to do so. And the second is the Southeast Asian countries. I think most of them, they really need to conduct economic institutional reforms. They should get rid of the mindset by relying and demanding too much from, the external assistance. You can rely on them, but by relying on them, you should have the mindset of, incorporating the advanced governance practices. For example, in terms of the debt sustainability, a minimal level of debt serving capacity should comply at least with G20 operational guidelines, for example, right? And Southeast Asian countries like Laos, they should adopt such debt limit policies. So far, I think most of them, they are doing well. But again, if the United States, tries to step in and like interfering in this third-party collaboration, I would like to say it could be possible, especially when the Biden administration has been trying to form these democratic alliances on infrastructure. It's not a friendly environment for China, or even it's a very tricky environment for Southeast Asia. So ASEAN must stand up and form as a centrality with unity to avoid that difficult choices. I hope I address all of them.
Thank you. Well, Dr. Gun, sorry to press you more with the questions, but I think we still have some left. And thanks for your answers so far. Dr. Guliev, could you please turn on your mic and ask the next question, please?
Hi, my name is Iqbal Guliev. I am the Deputy Director of International Institute of Energy Policy and Diplomacy of MGIMO University. Dr. Gun, thank you very much for your presentation, for your vision of China and ASEAN energy cooperation issues. As you said, ASEAN will develop relations and cooperation on climate issues with China as one of the largest and most important partners in the region. We know that Chinese leader Xi Jinping, in his speech at the UN General Assembly on September 22 last year, and Biden's Global Climate Summit, which was held some days ago, said that his country has set a goal for zero emissions by 2060. And I think that clean energy technologies is one of the best aspects of ASEAN and China energy cooperation. How do you think, with which ASEAN countries China would develop technological cooperation in the field of clean energy, in the field of carbon capture and storage? It's important cooperation field now.
Okay, thank you. And if I may add a sub question to the United States mentioned earlier, how do you assess the Blue Dot network? Is it does it have any real impact to impede Chinese cooperation projects in the region, or is it more or less talk shop as for now? So these two questions from Dr. Iqbal and on the Blue Dot network. Xue, please, the floor is back to you.
All right. Thank you very much for those two wonderful questions. For the first question, well, yeah, we are aware of a lot of things going on, you know, with regards to the climate change governance. Okay, let me address in this way. So you are asking which particular country in ASEAN would be a potential partner for China, right? I would like to say like all of them should be, but I think only Singapore has, so far Singapore has the capacity, has the reputation, and as well as, you know, this significance to collaborate with China. But with that being said, that doesn't mean the rest of the ASEAN member states, they are not capable of doing so. But Singapore has been, especially in recent years, Singapore has been sort of like a bridge for China to venture into the region, not just in those energy financing, you know, areas, right? We've seen Singapore has become the largest investor in Myanmar, which is partially true. And a large amount of these investments actually are Chinese companies registered in Singapore. Okay, and then by saying that, China has also, you know, increasing its investment in technology. I'm not sure to what extent they are related to clean technology, but we assume, you know, they are accompanying, you know, this clean technology in terms of coming to the region. And I know my university, Nanyang Technological University, they are working with China on in this regard, and they're trying to transfer in from the R&D into some, you know, concrete, you know, projects that is being implemented in China. Actually, not yet in Southeast Asia, but I think it is a matter of time. You know, once it's ready, once the experiment in China is ready, it would be, you know, promoted in the region. So I would definitely think there's potential, and there's a huge potential in this. And I would also assume Biden's administration, you know, in terms of bringing China into the climate change governance, would welcome China's efforts in the region. So it's not really a zero-sum game. It's international consensus of playing, of contributing to this governance issue. And in terms of second question, the Blue Dot network. Well, for now, I mean, although I didn't really work on this you know, topic, but I feel so far it's kind of like a talk shop, because the United States didn't, despite, you know, reforming its develop financing institutions back home, but we didn't really see much concrete, specific financing or aids coming to the region. We've seen somehow we feel it still remains on the paper, but the other partner, Japan, has never been, reducing or stopping such kind of efforts. So I would rather say Japan can be a very critical point in utilizing Blue Dot to sort of counter China's influence. But take a step back. I would think with all these competitions in the region, it is definitely beneficial for Southeast Asian countries. One particular area is we see China has been trying to improve on its image, and by improving on its image, it's not just symbolic. It's not rhetoric. It has been changing in concrete steps, as I illustrated in the presentation. So I feel with different players on the ground, eventually ASEAN member states, they can benefit if they can meet certain criteria like reforming its economy. It's just back to the point that I mentioned before, economy reforms, adopting the advanced governance and practices, things like that.
Okay, well, I should ask once again if there are any unanswered questions left, I mean the audience, or if someone wants to pose a question. So far, we don't see any indication of any new questions. Well, given all the discussion, let me add a couple of points which can link our today's topic to Russia in Southeast Asia, because Dr. Gun told us beforehand that she focuses particularly on China and Southeast Asia relations and particular aspects of it, and she was worrying whether she will be able to link it to Russia. So listening to you, several ideas came to my mind, because definitely we can have several takeaways for Russia, how Russia can behave in the region and how it can step up as a meaningful energy partner, energy cooperation partner for the countries in Southeast Asia. Well, first of all, if we look at that idea of the third party cooperation, we have a very good record of our partnership with Vietnam. And this is a very deep partnership which stretches up to different complicated and complex and even comprehensive types of cooperation, both on the territory of Vietnam and on the territory of the Russian Federation. So if, for example, Southeast Asia or its other dialogue partners could consider having Russia as a part of this diversification project, I think it would have been beneficial for all the countries in question. Then Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank was mentioned, and Russia is the third largest shareholder in this bank. So multilateral engagement or engagement through the multilateral institutions can also be, I think, a part of this broader picture. And generally, all what you told us about China's changing its position, adjusting to the regional realities and regional counter-reaction and adjustment to China's policy, I think it all makes very much sense for Russia to keep in mind while devising its policy towards Southeast Asia, and in particularly in the year which marks the mentioned anniversary of our dialogue partnership. So with these points in mind, let me conclude our talk and once again express our deep gratitude to Dr. Xue Gong for having her time with us today, for sharing very interesting experience of the third country involvement, I mean China, but which makes very much sense for us to keep in mind, to analyze, and to have our own takeaways for thinking how Russia can cooperate with Southeast Asia. Thank you, Dr. Gun. I think everyone can should and is happy to join me in thanking you today. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you. It's my honor.
Great.
Thank you.
So, and we will stop here. Thanks to everyone.